Tarin, estamos con Unión Europea.
Good morning.
Buenos días y bienvenidos. Good morning and welcome. Buen día, bienvenidos. Buenos días y nuevamente les damos.
Good morning again. Welcome, everyone. We would like to thank you for connecting with us again to our seminar of Women, Peace and Security organized with the Inter-American Defense Board and the Air Force of Chile. Yesterday, we mentioned that we were very proud to mention that we have more than 200,000 people enrolled. I believe that this morning we have 270,000 people. So we are very proud and very joyful with the work that we do. Basically, we want to disseminate the best practices, the experiences that we have had, different countries that are participating, of course, the member states of the Inter-American Defense Board and the observers. As you will see in the agenda this morning, we have a very robust agenda. We are going to be talking about specifically the 1325 resolution, about a series of things that we need to move forward in the incorporation of women on the armed forces, on positions where they can lead and take decisions, because we have seen when women participate on the peace processes, they are more strong. We are going to start with a message this morning of Mayor Carla Martes. She is going to share her standpoint about leaders on the armed force. We're going to talk about the resolution 1325 from different perspectives. The Southcom Inter-American Defense Board, the United Nations, and our perspective from Chile. We're going to have a break, and then we are going to be discussing. We heard yesterday from Canada. We're going to have from the Fund Ursi, and what are we doing in Chile specifically. We're going to talk, of course, about our national plan that supports Resolution 1325. This is the third version that we're working in right now. This is the action plan that we are currently developing. We are the first country of America to have an action plan. And we are going to hear from the Inter-American Defense Board, who is going to show some images and share some of the comments that we have received yesterday regarding the seminar. So again, I would like to thank you all. I would like to welcome you. And we're going to go ahead and start with our first presentation. We're going to have the leaders, women leaders in the armed forces, responsibility of Mayor Carla Marques from Brazil. She is an expert. She's a doctor. We can see different information on her curricula. She is an expert in health, institution administration. She was in charge of the Brazilian military hospital, first commander responsible for her unit, so a pioneer in ever since. She is right now leading the school of the Superior of Brazil. Good morning, I'm Carla Liro Masker. I am an expert and I work currently in Brazil. I would like to thank the opportunity that I have this morning to share the role of women from my standpoint and how we lead armed forces in this important event and this important seminar of Women, Peace and Security of 2024 under the responsibility of the Inter-American Defense Board. I believe that this is an amazing opportunity to discuss the opportunities and the challenges. From the very beginning of my career in the Air Force of Brazil, I understand that we need certain technical skills, physical skills, but also some core values, such as being completely committed, the ability to work in teams, and resiliency. These are values that are part and that promote women, allowing us to contribute completely and significantly to comply with the different missions that we have in the armed forces. Throughout the years, we have been seeing the progress of women in different sectors of the armed forces on training schools, maintenance, administrative positions, strategic positions of commanders. Women have stand out in different fronts, proving professionalism and competence. More than 14,000 women are now active in the Air Force of Brazil, accumulating victories and making history on our institution. We are part of a modern, inclusive, resilient force that is able to face challenges. Currently, in the Superior School of Defense, institution of high studies that is under the umbrella of the Ministry of Defense, I am part of the quantification of women on different training courses that we offered on the institution. This proves the performance of women on high-level positions, and it's on the same symphony of the challenges and objectives of the Armed Force of Brazil. It's important to acknowledge that women in positions or leading positions reflects social and organizational development within the armed forces. We are more strong, efficient, and more representative. The project that the civil society wants to see. We are the leaders that communicate the direction, we design policies, we decide on financial resources, we monitor and determine through excellency all the plans to guarantee the commitment of the organization, promoting at the same time a way on how people can contribute with the highest potential that we have as women that are leaders that represent the model for some other military institutions. In the armed forces, we would support civil society in Brazil. We have many paths. This is something that we have to do together. We have to fight together. We have to accept the status quo and to see the change that we want to be. I desire that courageous and efficiently we are ready for the missions that we want to face, the challenges that we need to face in the present, but also in the future to contribute to have a safest, fairest, and Pacific world. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Carla from Brazil, for this important message. And this is an amazing example of what they represent and the representation of women in the armed forces of Brazil in all of the operations that they carry out. We have now a presentation on behalf of the European Union about the resolution of 1325, how it's the implementation and the current situation. The European Union, if you're not aware, has joined force, a military joint force, and we have Dr. Lieutenant, who is responsible of women, peace, and security. She has a lot of experience, professional experience. She also is the cross-cutting liaison on all of the support that the United Nations offered throughout the world. So, Dr. Burton, the floor is yours for your presentation this morning.
Good morning, everybody. Do you have my presentation on the screen?
Dr. Lennon, can you hear us or can you see us?
Yes, I can see you, but I do not see my presentation. Do you have it on the screen?
We cannot see your screen.
Yes, good afternoon, good morning.
Now we can hear you. Now you're gonna see your screen.
If you have my presentation, we could share that with the participants.
Second, they're making some final adjustments. So for everybody to understand, this is, as I mentioned at the beginning, a joint effort between the Inter-American Defense Board and the Chilean Air Force. So we have a wonderful team that is putting together, making all the coordinations at the distance remotely. So, but now I think that we already have the image.
Okay, very good. Very good. So thank you again for your kind invitation. I will be giving you an overview how we are trying to integrate the Women, Peace and Security agenda in the EU Common Defence and Security Policy. Next, please. So let me start with the geopolitical context. What we see in Europe is that we are currently in a very challenging situation with the changing security environment. So for the European Union, our main framework is what we call EU Strategic Compass, which was set up a 10-year vision 2 years ago. And this is what is the main area of implementation in peace and security. We also see an increasing erosion of the values.
Because I lost your image.
I would propose that I put the video off so that you can hear me very well while I'm presenting.
You're back again. So yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, so what we see is an erosion of some of the values, including gender equality and human rights. And these values are increasingly at risk all over the world. And in particular, we see that women and girls are seriously affected by modern conflicts. And this is why it's very important to have a strong approach on women, peace and security. So for the European Union, we regularly have what we call Council conclusions. So these are conclusions by 27 foreign ministers. And we had the most recent one in 2022. And there we noted that women, peace and security agenda is central to contemporary global peace and security challenges. And what we see is that we have increasingly new security challenges, such as climate change, cyber attacks, disinformation, and all of these are undermining our work on gender equality and human rights. And also we see that these human rights violations are often among the root causes and drivers of conflict. And this is why it's very important to have a good approach on this topic. So just a word about the European Union Common and Defence Policy. It is our main framework for EU international crisis management. So we have both a civilian missions on law enforcement, capacity building, and so on, and also the military CSDP missions, such as military training and operations, including some naval operations, executive operations. And all the human resources for this common security and defense policy come from the EU member states, who also have their own national women, peace and security action plans. And I believe we have our Spanish colleague later today talking about their approach. We work together, of course, with member states. But here I will be talking to you about the overall European framework. So very few words about the policy framework. So obviously the UN Security Council resolutions are the main reference point. And for the European Union, we have our specific EU Gender Action Plan, which also includes the EU's plan to implement the WPS agenda. I already mentioned that we also have this strategic compass, which also has an objective to integrating gender and human rights in the European security. And I also mentioned the most recent council conclusions, so ministerial level conclusions on WPS from 2022. So these are the main policy references. What we propose in our approach is a three-pronged approach. So we want to do gender mainstreaming, which is integrating the gender perspective in all the tasks in our crisis management. We also do a lot of targeted projects. This could be, for example, supporting women's groups in a specific country, or supporting gender policy in our partner countries, and so on. And of course, as a diplomatic entity, European Union is always having dialogue. And there we can raise the gender issues at the political level, but also in our security dialogue. And the main approach that we have is that we look at both internal and external integration of a gender perspective in our common security and defense policy. And I will give you a little bit more details what we understand by internal and external. So first, before I go into the details, we often have this question: why should we integrate the women, peace, and security agenda? And here we have few arguments. The first, if we look at the nature of the modern conflicts, the protection of civilians is really key to a successful crisis management operations. If we look what's happening in Ukraine, the gender-based violence is one of the areas to look at. And that's why it's very important for the credibility to also have this aspect of protection of civilians always at mind. Also, gender equality is a root cause and driver of conflict. So for situational awareness, it's very important to have a good understanding to have a better operational effectiveness. Also, when we look at the legitimacy of local security institutions, it's often based on their capacity to protect civilians. So it's when we are doing our CSDP capacity building and training, it's important that we integrate this perspective into the training activities. And finally, it's at the final moment, it's the credibility of the EU at stake. If we say we want to lead by example, it means that we need to be serious about integrating these perspectives internally and externally. Next, please. Next. Okay, so let me go now to look at how we actually do this. So first of all, we have 3 levels of intervention. We start with the strategic level, when we look at the mandates, concepts, and capabilities, and political strategic objectives. Secondly, we have the operational level, where we are translating the political strategic objectives into specific military tasks and having a specific analysis in the operational environment. And then finally, we have the tactical level, which is the everyday CSDP activities in missions and operations and engagement with the civilian population and local security actors. So it's very important to have this integration in all these different levels. Sorry, next, please. We also have identified 3 key areas of interest in the WPS agenda. The first relates to participation of women. It's important to ensure that we have a representation of women in the CSDP missions and operations. We are currently at the level of about 7% of women in the military CSDP missions, and in our civilian missions, about 25%, which is rather low. But we take this into account that the average representation of women in the EU member states military is about 10%. So it will take some time to reach much higher levels, but we are trying to make some efforts internally. And externally, of course, we want to support the integration of women in the crisis management, conflict resolution, and peace building. Secondly, it's very important to look at the protection of women and addressing the gender-based violence. So internally, we include the codes of conduct and discipline measures, and externally, we focus on the protection of civilians and supporting the victims. And finally, I was already mentioning that one of the key elements is integrating a gender perspective. So internally, we try to have the gender responsive leadership, and that means really the senior leadership in our missions and operation should send the right signal. And we also need to have enough gender expertise and networking in place. And externally, we should always have a gender analysis and action plans in various theater of operations. Next, please. So let me now say a few words about how we should integrate the gender perspective. So the first element in all the activities is always to have a sex disaggregated data collection in all the activities. So for example, if we organize a training activity, we should be able to know how many women, how many men were trained, etc. And also the external integration includes the whole project cycle of our crisis management operations. So we could start with having the gender analysis. We have the gender action plan. When we are doing the planning of activities and quick impact projects, we should integrate the gender perspective there already in the mandates. And then when we are implementing the activities, it should be also translated into these activities. Also in our training and military exercises, we are now integrating some gender-related scenarios. When we do reporting, we have the general reporting and also some specific reporting annually on the implementation of the gender action plan. And finally, on monitoring and evaluation and strategic reviews, it would also be important to have the gender aspect included. Next, please. And then internally, it's also very important when we say leading by example. I was already mentioning the gender responsive leadership, which is also something that, for example, we are sharing information with NATO, which is also highlighting this point in their policy. And also when we look at working environment, human resources, and internal gender trainings, there should be a clear zero tolerance policy on harassment and so on. And also we have a system of having gender advisors and focal points in our missions and operations. And they are really the ones who make the policy a part of the daily work. And also it's very important to improve the knowledge management and sharing of lessons learned on these topics. Next, please. We also believe that strategic communications are very important. So internally, it's very important that there is a transparency of what are the priorities and what is the gender policy. And externally, it's also part of our communications. For example, when we have International Women's Day, it's important that this is when we can give information about the good stories and what we have achieved so far and what are the challenges in this topic. Next, please. And then concerning the partnership, this is, of course, very important because our missions and operations, they are never the only European Union instrument in the country. We often have our diplomatic missions, EU delegations, and also EU member states. So it's very important to have an EU integrated approach when we promote the Women, Peace and Security agenda. We also work very closely with United Nations, notably on the military side, we work with Office of Military Affairs. And also with NATO, we have a close cooperation with the NATO International Military Staff Gender Team and some joint work plans. Also with international NGOs, national security institutions, and local civil society. And it's in this context that I would like to really thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity to share information with you as we have set up this partnership. Next, please. So I would just like to conclude here by saying that promoting the Women, Peace and Security agenda and gender equality, it remains one of the core values and key operational priorities for the European Union. And we see that these values are increasingly at risk in the complex security environment. But ultimately, we believe and that means that it's not only the right thing to do, but it's also how to achieve it. And this is really what we try to do with our operational guidance to our missions and operations. And I really look forward to see if you have any questions or comments. Thank you very much.
Okay, Dr. Littinen, thank you very much for your presentation.
Gracias, doctora, por
your presentation, and as well as all the presentations. All the YouTube channels and the Zoom will be open to receive all the questions from every participant. So once we gather all of them, we're gonna send it to each of the presenters, in this case, all the questions regarding your presentation in the European Union and Resolution 1325 will be addressed to you, so we can get your feedback and then go back to all the public that had the questions for you. So thank you very much again for your very enlightening presentation. Bien, ahora vamos a pasar a...
Now, I think that we're going to go ahead and talk about the perspective of 1325 from the Southcom standpoint. We have Commander Alex Hone. She has a very important curricula on women, peace, and security with a focus on Latin America. She has been an attaché on the Armed Forces of Mexico. And for this presentation, she is the responsible women, peace, and security implementation on the Southcom. Mayor, the floor is yours.
Can you hear us?
¿Nos escucha?
Can you hear us or see us just like we were this morning? Okay, as I was mentioning,
Estaba mencionando
from the European Union, this is a joint effort between the Chilean Air Force and the Inter-American Defense Board, where we are trying to, or well, actually, yesterday came out very well together, all the links between the Inter-American Defense Board, the Chilean Air Force, and the presenters that are coming from all the world. So we're just gonna wait a little bit more, please. Ask you to have some patience to get the connection going. Okay, now we hear that she's logging in again. She had a connection problem. So we're gonna wait for you, Aries. We're gonna wait for a couple more minutes, otherwise we're gonna go on the agenda. Bien, mientras esperamos, quiero aprovechar la instancia de hacer una reflexión un poco en base a lo que vimos el día de ayer, para todos aquellos que pudieron
for yesterday, for all those that were here with us sharing the presentations. Basically, they are geared towards the operational role of women in the armed forces in general. And a little bit what we're going to see is the relevance of the resolution 1325 and the best practices and lessons learned have taught us that in practical terms, we have also seen that the role of women in the armed forces goes beyond just advancing in topics of gender, because that's good, because it looks good, or because it's ethical. But we have seen, and we have been able to prove this in the different countries, particularly in Chile. We have the experience of the United States as well, and of what has been the effect, the real actual effect of women in operations, understanding that there is a universe of selection of 50% to recruit talent for the armed forces from the population. It's probably maybe 50-50 between men and women, a population that can be recruited. And besides, we also take advantage of all the talents and particularities of both men and women to do the decision-making process. When we see that men are more analytical in general terms and women are more intuitive, and when the decision process integrates both, then this is much more enriching and helps to have a better decision-making process. In the field, for instance, to obtain more information, to obtain a better sensitiveness of what is happening, men and women have different talents for that. Within the experience that I have been learning in this subject, for instance, the forces that have been deployed in different peace missions, we have learned how, where there are women integrated in the operations, the capacity and the quality of intelligence collection is much more relevant. Also, we are able to see, as I said at the beginning, that all the peace processes where women are involved have a possibility of being lasting, more lasting. Why? Because evidently, when we do a planning and we leave out certain aspects, for instance, that have to do with the gender aspect, there are going to be more problems. Last year, for example, in one of the seminars that was carried out by the IADB, we talked about the migration flows. And one of the things that we realized was something common among all the countries is that when you received the migrants in the different countries and build the camps to give them the best possible conditions within the critical situation, for instance, you have to have maybe a place for the sanitation of these people in the stadium or something like that. So there were men planners, and they did not take into consideration certain aspects that evidently have a relationship with gender, like the amount of bathrooms. It is very common to talk about a design of in a stadium of a place where there are mass uh, population goes, and the queue of women to go to the bathrooms is longer. Well, in these camps, when these refugee camps, when you take into account the gender perspective, you do this in a better manner. In the IDB, we analyze the process of planning of operations to support catastrophes. When you do a plan with a gender perspective, you are going to plan the assistance that you are going to receive, and not only just deliver medicines and food, but things that are just women needs, like services or elements to palliate or mitigate physiological problems. And the menstrual problems of women. And because the solution that can be given is much more holistic when it is planned with a gender perspective. So this is just something that I wanted to comment about the presentations that we saw yesterday and that we're going to see today and tomorrow. They tell me that we still have a technical problem. So right now we're going to have a short break of approximately 5-10 minutes. Please keep connected, because what is going to come is very interesting, because we're going to see how the different countries, the different organizations like the European Union, the Southern Command, and the IADB see these situations. So please keep online, and we're going to give you some institutional videos of the IADB and who we are and who the Air Force of Chile is, and what are the different environments of action that we have. So please keep connected. We will start at 9:45.
¿Qué nos hace volar? ¿Qué hace que empecemos cada día con energía y pasión? nos moviliza. Chile y su gente. De norte a sur, de mar a cordillera. Aterrizando en territorio insular y haciendo patria en las profundidades de la Antártica. 12.000 mujeres y hombres, trabajando en equipo, preparados para esos cambios vertiginosos que trae aparejados este cuarto ya de siglo XXI. Atravesando los cielos de agitadas ciudades, enfrentando el ardiente desierto y los fríos vientos de la Patagonia Austral, custodiando en toda su extensión nuestro amplio espacio aéreo. Allí está la Fuerza Aérea de Chile. En ese escenario, fundamental resultan las personas que integran la institución, quienes se perfeccionan de manera permanente a través de programas de pregrado y posgrado en ciencias aeroespaciales, con apoyo de prestigiosas universidades, con el mejoramiento de la infraestructura educativa y la gestión de nuevos talentos, de manera de potenciar el proceso de selección a las escuelas matrices. Todo ello sumado al sistemático desarrollo de la ciencia e innovación, son la impronta de los aviadores militares del presente y futuro, los mismos que hoy ponen su vista y orientan su avión directo a las estrellas, una ruta que lleva a la Fuerza Aérea a renovar constantemente sus conocimientos, acordes con las más altas exigencias, moderna tecnología y sistemas de armas de última generación en beneficio directo del desarrollo del país y bienestar de cada uno de sus habitantes. Esta es la FACH de ayer, de hoy y de siempre. La misma que gracias a sus capacidades estratégicas y la polivalencia de sus medios, se transforma en componente clave de la política de defensa nacional, generando disuasión para disfrutar la paz, que trae progreso y desarrollo. Aviadores militares en alerta permanente para ir en auxilio de quien lo necesite, con sus helicópteros y personal en rescates en la alta cordillera, en catástrofes naturales a lo largo del territorio nacional, con sus aviones en evacuaciones aeromédicas, trasladando forraje para animales a lugares donde sin el medio aéreo sería imposible llegar, colaborando activamente en el combate de incendios forestales y asesorando a la autoridad con información geoespacial. Esta es la Fuerza Aérea casi centenaria, a la que orgullosamente pertenecemos. Una institución de alas nobles y abiertas que hoy vuela a grandes alturas con auspiciosos y prometedores desafíos. Esta es la Fuerza Aérea de la tecnología, la del profesionalismo a toda prueba, la del compromiso y rectitud, la del silencioso sacrificio y dedicación de mujeres y hombres que juraron dar la vida por Chile y por cada uno de sus habitantes. La Fuerza Aérea de Chile que toma altura en sostenido vuelo hacia un promisorio futuro, directo a las estrellas.
Bien, muchas gracias por
Thank you
acompañarnos.
very much for accompanying us during this break. And now we're going to continue with the agenda. We have we will have the Southern Command later. And the next topic, as I said, has to do with the Resolution 1325 from the point of view of the IADB. And I think that it is very important to remind you and to those that don't know about it, what is the IADB? It is the organization that is advisory in the security and defense for the OAS. The IADB is comprised of 26 member states and observation organizations like Spain, and that these two are very relevant for this seminar in particular. Who is going to make this presentation of the resolution 1325 at the IADB is Captain Tarin Machado Sanes. She is the person in charge of women, peace, and security. And I'm proud to have been working with her at the IADB. She is an aviation psychologist of the Navy of Brazil, and she has the operational experience of having been in ships, helicopters, and working directly with these tasks that are traditionally male. And she has been able to work on very difficult terrains. She is a psychologist and she has a magister in human resources and also has a course in women, peace, and security in China and at the Inter-American Defense College. So with you have the floor. Ladies and gentlemen, and the virtual public, good morning to you all. It is an honor and a privilege to be here with you in front of this very select group of the Air Force of Chile and to be remotely with more than 12,000 people from 66 countries to discuss such an important issue as the advancements in the agenda Women, Peace and Security in our member states. Before I start my presentation, I would like to express my sincere admiration to Commodore Mayor and Commander Cristina Fabri. The idea of joining up to organize this seminar came up in 2023 when I had the privilege of working on the leadership of Commodore Mayor and I met Commander Cristina. I was familiarized with her very significant work as the delegate of gender of the Chilean Youth Air Force, and I express my admiration for her. You are the sources of inspiration and knowledge. In this context of cooperation, I will start with my presentation highlighting the importance of joining efforts in order to be able to advance every day more in the agenda of women, peace, and security. For my presentation, I'm going to talk about the program MPS of the IADB, its objectives, its action plan, and the results that we have achieved. So before I start with my presentation, I invite you to reflect on the importance of the mission of the Secretariat of the IADB and in the promotion of the agenda of women, peace, and security of its member states. This slide shows the 107 countries that are in fact committed with this agenda. The countries that have a national action plan considered as the most efficient and mechanism to transmit the concerns of the resolution 1325 of the UN and the 10 resolutions, the 10 subsequent resolutions, which is known as the agenda of women, peace, and security. The main objective is the cooperation among the 26 member states of the organization. The member states of the IADB include a diversity of countries of the American continent, that are committed with the technical advisory, consultation, and education in military and defense issues for the OAS. In the previous slide, we saw the countries that launched the Pell Bank. But here we're going to focus on the members of the member countries of the IADB. As you can observe, the countries in yellow are the ones that have a national plan for the action in peace, women, peace, and security, like Argentina, Brazil, Canada, Chile, El Salvador, the United States, Guatemala, Mexico, Paraguay, Peru, and Uruguay. It is important to see that these 11 countries have a PNA, and out of these 5 have a plan that has expired. Some are trying to start it again, like Brazil and Chile. And Chile has shown a great uh, advance. This is the third review of the PNA with the assistance of the Inter-American Commission of Women of the OAS. In this sense, the mission of the IADB is to facilitate the cooperation of these countries that are so different in the exchange of experiences to share their experiences and the identification and dissemination of best practices, besides confronting all the challenges that have been found with regards to the women in the armed forces. This collective effort has allowed the implementation of the agenda, admitting an inclusive approach that will benefit all those involved. And the development of this work, we consider that the mandates of the OAS with relation to women, peace, and security, and the gender approach of the IDB will be good for the dissemination and the integration of the perspective of gender in security and defense in the hemisphere and contribute with the cooperation of the member states in this area. We also consider the interest in this topic among the member states of the IADB and the opportunity generated by the fact of having different realities. The Conference of the Ministers of Defense of the Americas, known as a CMDA, recognizes the importance of continuing working for the integration of women in the activities of defense and security, and sees the importance of giving continuity to the work of the NPS. The last working group was carried out in April, and it resulted in very significant recommendations of the Ministries of Defense, stressing on the need to increase the participation of women in the armed forces and security. And among the main directives, we can highlight the importance of women in peacekeeping operations like humanitarian assistance, maritime operations, and peacekeeping operations, to include women in the decision-making positions, and the importance of the efficient communication and to reach the goals of the agenda, women, peace, and security. The report of this meeting is going to be presented tomorrow on the 10th of May by the Departments of Defense of the United States of America. From these documents that I have cited, we will carry out several actions like seminars, bulletins, and the magazine of the IADB. These are great opportunities in the sense that we can streamline the NPS agenda in cyber defense, humanitarian assistance, weapons control, human rights, international humanitarian law. I highlight the participation of 14,000 persons in our seminar in November last year. And being this, we produce the magazines and some documents with recommendations for the member states. And we highlight all the actions and initiatives of each country in these documents in relation to the topic. And we share experiences that are inspiring to contribute to the dissemination of best practices. In our site, we have the 2 editions of 2022 and 2023. Here we summarize the program of Women, Peace and Security of the Secretariat of the IADB that wants to look for the active participation of the states, generating the need to advance in the sense of urgency in the MPS topics, and to keep a vision for each country, transferring information directly from the countries. And we developed an investigation for this objective, but we need assistance in the compiling of all these data, like the percentage of women in the armed forces that are in leadership positions in peacekeeping missions, operations, and the money. And I would like to have the monitoring in real time of these data. The third one is to develop activities of training, education, and dissemination of the MPS. We have several strategic allies, like the Ministry of Defense of Spain, that through General Esteban, our delegate, gave a course on gender, and which will be launched by the one colonel of the center. On the training on May 10th, that is tomorrow, we're going to announce a very important alliance with a Hiker Ranger company that specialize in cyber security. This resulted from a course that was projected to be especially accessible for military schools, with a focus on ethics, and will be presented in an interactive format, especially addressed to the young public. This course of 2 weeks was given as experience for learning and includes this dynamic. Here we have some projects of the Secretariat of the IDB that needs the continuous collaboration between the IDB member states and observers, and the strategic alliances with the advisory of professionals trained in the implementation of these actions. This is the commission, the Inter-American Commission of Women of the UN ONU Women in Florida, through the Gordon Institute, that will coordinate in the prevention of natural disasters in Central America, and the Ministry of Spain, and the company Hacker Rangers. And all these are so important partnerships to comply with our program and the compliance of the mandate of the OAS. Before I finish, we see the question: what is the mission of the IDB in the promotion of the agenda, women, peace, and security in its member states? The IDB has the commitment of the UN and OAS to include women in all the levels of decision making and security and defense. And we will continue evolving and strengthening ourselves with women in our organizational development. I hope that this presentation has been clear on the importance of the MPS program, and that it can become an incentive for everyone to include it in its different activities and our web pages and our social network. So I leave my contact for any type of doubt or information that you might need. Thank you very much. As we have seen, that the IADB, in the global regional context where it works, has launched and has this program, where maybe one of the great things that I would like to do is to tell you that we're going to compile data and recollect data. Each one of the ministries of defense and the agencies of the armed forces, both military and civilian, will collect information to do this data collection, to see how many women are and what positions they involve themselves, and what are the duties and the use of those positions, among other things. So when the IDB and the different institutions bring these surveys and data, we hope that everybody can cooperate with that. To advance in the presentation, and as Commander Darin said, Spain is one of the great supporters of the IDB in this sense. I'm going to leave with you Colonel Juan José Lucero, who is a member of the Ministry of Defense of Spain, and who is going to give us a presentation on this course of gender in operations. It is important for you to know that Spain, within the context of the UE, has been designated as the responsible for the representation of all those forces that are going to be deployed in peace missions, specifically in the perspective of gender. I will leave. He is also the national delegate of the Ministry of Defense before NATO, and he is the leader of gender education that I talked about before, and he is the head of the international course on the integral focus on gender and for the National Plan of Action on Women, Peace and Security. You have the floor now.
Thank you. I hope that you can hear me well. Maybe we can share the video and you can authorize me to start the video, please. While we wait for it, I would like to thank you all. To the Armed Forces in Chile, Inter-American Defense Board. And what we're going to do is I'm going to present a training opportunity that we have on the Ministry of Defense that we offer for all of the members of the Inter-American Defense Board. And this is a training course I would like to explain while we see the presentation. As I was saying, this is something that we developed on Spain, and there is under development. We are leaders on the gender perspective for the common policy of the European Union. And we have developed curricula. We have NATO, we have with the Netherlands also some programs, common programs, and considering everything that we have at an international level, we have an online training course with gender perspective, as I explained, for the Inter-American Defense Board. And this is going to be the 5th edition, actually. This is something that has been already delivered for 5,000 people. They have reached 90% in each of the courses. So as part of the originators of the training course, we are very satisfied. This is why we want to offer it to the members of the Inter-American Defense Board. As we can see on the slide, one of the main things that we want to reach is to raise awareness. If it's a civilian, law enforcement, or military staff that is being part of the missions, operations of NATO, European Union, UN, any other international organization that is collaborating with missions and operations. We want to raise awareness to all of the members of these different institutions of the benefits of gender equality, equality between men and women, and how can we apply the gender perspective throughout conflict, and especially in the conflict that is mainly when the military and the law enforcement need to act. So who can complete the training course? This is, as I mentioned, the 5th edition. It's going to be specifically for the members of the armed forces and peace corps of the state, carabineros, law enforcement, civilians that are part of the member states of the Inter-American Defense Board that can at certain part be deployed or have been deployed on peace operations. It's going to be in Spanish, and we have developed it in Spanish basically because with some of my colleagues of the armed forces with wide experience on deployment, on operations. We thought that it was ideal to make it in Spanish because we don't have something like this right now on the international realm. We don't have much training courses as this one. We do have them in other languages, but we are 15,000 million people that are speaking Spanish. This is our mother tongue, and we thought that it was important not only for the security members of the states, but everyone that is willing to do it in Spanish. This is going to be 100% online learning. It's the virtual training course of the Ministry of Defense of Spain. This is our website, and we will talk about enrollment in the future. But if you have technical consultations, this is the email that you can access. This is the Equality Observatory on the International Department of the Ministry of Defense of Spain. It's going to be available for any type of electronic device. If you want to do it on your phone, on your tablet, on your laptop. We have 11 didactic elements about gender and human rights. We can go at our own pace, on rhythm, and once we end it, we will receive a certification of completion of the 11 units. Now, the date that we have thought of, it's being disseminated. We're disseminating the information of the training course. This is why it's important to be part of this seminar of Women, Peace, and Security. We have until May 15, then we have an inscription period. That is the second part of, or it's late May. And then we will have the virtual campus open for 3 months, June, July, and August. It's a 70-hour training course. So 60-hour training course, I'm sorry. So without any problem, I think that we can all complete it. This is a slide that I wanted to have this morning because this is something that will help me explain what we have in these 11 units. First, the presentation of the course, unit 0, right, where we talk about the importance and the awareness raising that is essential between our staff, why it's important to have this knowledge. This is 0. Now we have the first unit talking about basic gender concepts that are going to be essential to complete the training course. We have 2 and 3 didactic units, gender equality, how do we see it on different international organizations, United Nations, NATO, we have here, and the European Union. And then we have at the very end, the perception of the implementation of gender perspective in the OAS. Number 4, unit number 4, that talks about human safety, talks about how we can identify and approach the cross-cutting challenges for survival, dignity of the population, because remember that we have different phases on this specific that can be regarding children, human rights, and these are units that we want to go deep in. For instance, unit number 5, it's about human rights violation, trafficking in person, sexual exploitation, sexual harassment, the difference between gender violence, technology, and mutilation in girls, infanticide. In number 6, we are going to be developing the children on armed conflict, what's the affectation that they can suffer because of the armed conflict. And we have safe schools. This is a very new and trendy topic that we want to develop on number 6. Now in number 7, sexual violence and conflict, the military and the law enforcement need to fight it, and we compared with gender violence. Number 8, it's about the development of the concepts for the protection of civilians in our conflict. Number 9, it's about the international humanitarian law in times of war. 10 talks about the approach on violence, terrorism, counterterrorism, and gender perspective. And finally, number 11 will explain about the tasks, the missions that you will have to carry out if you are a point of contact on gender perspective in missions, operations. After each of the units, we will have to take a test. It's a short test of three questions, but this will allow us to go to the next unit. Now, the inscription. It can be through a link that has been created by the Inter-American Defense Board. You have it on screen right now. And also we have a QR code, also on screen, created by the Inter-American Defense Board. In any of the cases, when you open the link or you copy the QR code, you will find a form that you have to fill out with your name, your position, if you're part of the military, part of the law enforcement, if you are a doctor, civilian, so on and so forth. Now, it's fundamental to enter your email. This is why we have it twice. And the form that you have to fill out, this is to avoid mistakes and typos. The email, it's going to be essential because here is where you will be receiving the credentials to be able to access the server, the virtual campus of defense. Now, once we fill out the form, we can send it. This is part of the process that I wanted to explain about the inscription. Once you filled out the form, the QR code, you will access to the logo of the Inter-American Defense Board. This is the database that they will be creating, and through the mail we'll send to the Ministry of Defense of Spain. We will go ahead and give it to the virtual campus of defense. Then you will be receiving an email with the instructions on how to enter and access the virtual campus with a username, a password, and this is how you will start the units. At the very end, you will receive a certificate, as I explained. But basically, once you go on the platform, the virtual campus, you're going to have a username and a password, as I explained. Now, if you have problems to find the training course at the very end in the tab that I'm highlighting on number 3, you will enter gender. And this is, I repeat, the 5th edition on advisement of gender in operations. You can change your password if you like, so on and so forth. Again, at the very end, you will get a certification. This is issued by the Ministry of Defense of Spain, saying that this gentleman or ma'am has completed the training course, 11 units, etc. And myself, I signed the certificate. I explained also in a note that this is a 60-hour training course. It can be more. It can be more because I said that we can, or we do have the possibility to go at our own pace. If you have any questions, you can send me an email. And Comodoro, thank you very much. I don't know if we have questions, comments, or something that you would like me to clarify. Excellent. Colonel, thank you for the presentation. Thank you for the information about the training course. Thanks to the government of Spain, of course, because this tool is now available. It's a very important tool. As Commander Talon mentioned, this is an essential tool and one of the main elements that we have with Spain and the Inter-American Defense Board. And this is why we want to highlight the importance of this training course. So if we receive questions about the training course, the enrollment, the inscription, it can be compiled if it's through the Zoom platform or if it's on our YouTube channel. We will send you all of the information, Colonel. Thank you. So we're going to go back to our initial agenda, talking about the Resolution 1325, presentation of the European Union. Then we have the presentation of the Inter-American Defense Board. Now we're going to see how are we moving forward and what's the current situation of the implementation of 1325 from the standpoint of the Southcom. Commander Alex Pop is going to be responsible. She has been an attaché in Mexico and the force of Torrijos, and she is responsible of women, peace, and security for the Southcom. Commander Hobbs, I believe that you can hear us now without a problem.
Sí, buenos días, ¿me pueden escuchar?
Good morning. Can you hear me? Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead. Thank you. Thank you for the invitation, and I really appreciate the IADB for inviting me this morning to give you this talk that as you know, we're going to do it from the perspective of the Southern Command. I'm Lieutenant Colonel Aries Hope, and I'm part of the program of Women, Peace, and Security, and the area Richardson, the head of the Southern Command. I welcome you very warmly, and I hope that this presentation is going to be very fruitful for you all. For the next slide. And so my agenda is going to give you just a brief presentation of the importance that we all know about from each organization about the Resolution 1325. And we're going to see on the side of the Southern Command what it is the operational application of this agenda and some recommendations that I have for the audience, and more than anything else, to have the opportunity of receiving questions from you. So the next slide, thank you. As we can know, the purpose of the Resolution 1325 is to empower the half of the population of the world as equals partners in the prevention of conflicts and the construction of peace, recognizing at the same time the impact that the crisis and the armed conflicts have on women and girls. So in this point, we are saying that it is not that only women and girls are impacted, but it is the disproportionality that make it critical. The next slide. Then, if women are going to be impacted in a crisis or in a war, then they have to be part of the solution. And this is why this resolution, this global resolution, as you can see here in the different levels of the presentation, we are going to go down to the national level of the United States by the agenda Women, Peace, and Security that was passed in 2017. With this act, this was the first holistic law of the world in which stated that we have to do something with respect to women because women are being disproportionately impacted in these conflicts. And as the Department of Defense, we have a responsibility of doing something to this respect. And this law said not only the Department of Defense, but also the State Department and the USAID and the DHS Department of the nation also have a responsibility. So all these different agencies have part of the responsibility and will implement the agenda in conformance with their objectives. So centering ourselves directly on the Department of Defense and to the strategic framework for implementation that was updated in 2023, October 2023, and we have now our new strategy. And in 2024, we're going to see from the Department of Defense how and what are the objectives that we are going to comply with and that are being adjusted at this moment. But I can talk about the objectives that we have right now to this date. The next slide, please. Well, here, since we are entering into matter, we know that the importance of women, peace, and security that many times is interpreted as only related to a feminist group or only for women, but no, it includes all human capital. So all the values that we have and that we deserve as the dignity, human rights, equality before the law, equality of having the opportunity to do or give our contribution, our significant contribution in leadership positions, and to be taken into account, to participate and to take into account our voice and vote so that we can also be those peace actions so that peace can be legitimated and lasting, as my predecessor mentioned, because this has to do with the operation, the peacekeeping operations, and any operation that we carry out as military forces. If we work with all the human capital, we will be able to see a problem and with the best perspective, with all the perspectives included, not only of women, but also of the vulnerable populations as well. And in this way, we can influence and give part to our leadership of what is the problem in its totality and how we can approach it and face it in a more effective manner. The next slide. Of course, all this is for the security of the hemisphere in which we live. And as we know, the Department of Defense of the United States of America has all the commanders, the combating commanders, and the areas of responsibility divided, as you see here on this map. And the one we are in charge of is the area of responsibility that comes from Guatemala to the Patagonia, including the Caribbean countries. And so the objectives that General Richardson and the Department of Defense have given me to carry out is first to have in account that before I can give you this talk as associated countries, I have to be the example. Number one is to model and employ the agenda of women, peace, and security. This means the Department of Defense has to be in itself a diverse team, a team that is equal, in which the voice and vote is given to all its members. And in this way, we can have the participation of all our military men and women and members of defense. And that will be all part of a holistic and diverse team. Second, promote the participation of women in our partner countries, as I am doing through this talk. And then also visit all the partner countries that we have in our area of responsibility. Third, to guarantee the protection of civilians and women when there is a deployment of a team of the Department of Defense in these countries, these partner countries, we have to guarantee the protection of all the civilian and women staff, since we must not affect the military operation. and make valid the human rights of all the civilians and women in any country that we are operating in. So in this example, you see me in this training that I'm giving, particularly it is an exercise that is called Sentinel Guardian, the Central American Guardian. And as you can see, I'm giving a class of women, peace and security to a troop of the Guatemalan army. And from this image, 120 troops of this battalion, there was only one woman in all this group in this presentation. So here you can see the disproportionality of the representation of women in the military teams. But one is better than zero. So let's go forward. And we are giving this type of training because we have to be the example. We have to give these talks to our countries, our allied countries. The second is that when we give these trainings, we focus ourselves because there are many spheres of the program of women, peace and security, but right now we're focusing on the professionalization of the military women in all the phases of their career, from their recruitment, retention, mentoring, training, and education and promotions, and promoting promotions based on merit and not on quotas, in which just because we want to integrate women or add women, that means that they can have a significant participation. No, that is not the case. We have to see that all these opportunities be in effect merited, deserved, and given equally and fairly. And also the inclusion in all the ranges and positions, not only administrative or sanitation. And in this way, give the opportunity for women to take all these leadership positions effectively. As we said before, the protection of civilians is our third example. And here we are in a humanitarian mission with Guatemala from the comfort mission ship that that have missions every year. And the mission of 2022, and in which I participated, we gave education and also COVID tests and many other issues. Education as far as gender violence and sexual reproduction, etc. But when we do these missions, the protection of the civilians is primary because we cannot give these courses, these trainings, and at the same time not have into account that we have to protect the civilians so that we do not become part of the problem. What is the operational application of all this agenda that we have at the Southern Command? Well, it is to see from the problems that are affecting us as a hemisphere, how they are affecting women and the most vulnerable populations in different manners. And in this way, we can respond to these natural disasters or to the irregular migration, as you can see on the Darien Strait, and cybersecurity that we have been seeing, uh, artificial intelligence and how this is affecting women and how we are being uh, attacked and how children are being recruited by the social networks. Also, climate security with the movement of the El Nino, we see the change, the climate changes. So all this application, this operational application, if we understand how it affects women and the vulnerable populations, then we will be able to do and give a better advisory. So when we talk about gender perspective, we believe in teaching the questions that we have to make when we go to the affected countries or when we find ourselves in the middle of a natural disaster or in any other situation, we have to ask ourselves some questions, but we have to change the questions not only ask how many women are participating, but how many are being included, who is being listened, if these women are raising their hands and if their interventions are being valued and if their contributions are being used to change the standards or the norms of the country. So the perspectives of gender are being complied with, and the participation is significant. So our recommendations in general is that all these agendas and the purposes be aligned from the highest level of leadership, from the strategy and culture, because we can change standards and norms, but the culture, the everyday culture, and the chauvinism and sexual harassment is something that we cannot change quickly, but so we have to change the culture so that we can be the ones that say, well, this has happened and we have to do something to this respect. So that communication along the chain of command is very critical. And also to have a network of experts that are trained. And that's why I give this a type of talk because and training and so that we can be the example of those democratic values, of those values of human rights that we want to disseminate, not only uh, for ourselves, but for all our units. The next slide. So here I can give you a summary on a picture summary because many times an image speaks better than 1,000 words. So I want to recount all the different conferences and talks and events that we have as the Southern Command with the support of General Richardson and also with the collaboration of the Inter-American Defense Board and different types of agencies. We have a very broad network of leaders and support in which we give these talks so that we can be urging our countries, our allied countries, to join this resolution, this global resolution, and the objectives of the Department of Defense from the perspective that better complies with for that country. Because we are very aware that each country has a different level of progress in this area. So we are very aware of that. And simply, we just give our example and our perspective. And with this, leave my contact information. And of course, I am traveling with General Richardson when she goes to any of the countries of our area of responsibility. And here, then I give a talk or a seminar. And if I have a chance to see you there, I would appreciate if you come to me and say hello. And I want to thank you now for your participation and any doubt or clarification that you need. Now you have my point of contact and you can reach me. And with this, I say goodbye.
Okay.
Thank you, Commander Hoff, and thank you for your presentation and your message that comes from the Southern Command, where the advancement in women peace and security is not only a good intention, but it has some tangible effects, like the fact that we have the first female commander of the Southern Command, General Richardson. Thank you for your message and for explaining that this has to be a holistic integration at the highest level, and it has to go down so that we have really some practical effects to advance in this topic. Well, to those that are connected, we are going to have a break of about 10 minutes now. We're going to come back at 10:50 with the last part of today's presentation. So please stay online. Thank you very much.
¿Qué nos hace volar? ¿Qué hace que empecemos cada día con energía y pasión? Nos moviliza Chile y su gente. De norte a sur, de mar a cordillera. Aterrizando en territorio insular y haciendo patria en las profundidades de la Antártica. 12.000 mujeres y hombres, trabajando en equipo, preparados para esos cambios vertiginosos que trae aparejados este cuarto ya de siglo XXI. Atravesando los cielos de agitadas ciudades, enfrentando el ardiente desierto y los fríos vientos de la Patagonia Austral, custodiando en toda su extensión nuestro amplio espacio aéreo. Allí está la Fuerza Aérea de Chile. En ese escenario, fundamental resultan las personas que integran la institución, quienes se perfeccionan de manera permanente a través de programas de pregrado y posgrado en ciencias aeroespaciales, con apoyo de prestigiosas universidades, con el mejoramiento de la infraestructura educativa y la gestión de nuevos talentos, de manera de potenciar el proceso de selección a las escuelas matrices. Todo ello sumado al sistemático desarrollo de la ciencia e innovación. Son la impronta de los aviadores militares del presente y futuro, los mismos que hoy ponen su vista y orientan su avión directo a las estrellas. Una ruta que lleva a la Fuerza Aérea a renovar constantemente sus conocimientos, acordes con las más altas exigencias, moderna tecnología y sistemas de armas de última generación, en beneficio directo del desarrollo del país y bienestar de cada uno de sus habitantes. Esta es la FACH de ayer, de hoy y de siempre. La misma que, gracias a sus capacidades estratégicas y la polivalencia de sus medios, se transforma en componente clave de la política de defensa nacional, generando disuasión para disfrutar la paz, que trae progreso y desarrollo. Aviadores militares en alerta permanente para ir en auxilio de quien lo necesite, con sus helicópteros y personal en rescates en la alta cordillera, en catástrofes naturales a lo largo del territorio nacional, con sus aviones en evacuaciones aeromédicas, trasladando forraje para animales a lugares donde sin el medio aéreo sería imposible llegar, colaborando activamente en el combate de incendios forestales y asesorando a la autoridad con información geoespacial. Esta es la Fuerza Aérea casi centenaria, a la que orgullosamente pertenecemos. Una institución de alas nobles y abiertas que hoy vuela a grandes alturas con auspiciosos y prometedores desafíos. Esta es la Fuerza Aérea de la tecnología, la del profesionalismo a toda prueba, la del compromiso y rectitud, la del silencioso sacrificio y dedicación de mujeres y hombres que juraron dar la vida por Chile y por cada uno de sus habitantes. La Fuerza Aérea de Chile que toma altura en sostenido vuelo hacia un promisorio futuro, directo a las estrellas.
1, engines full power, and liftoff of Transport.
La exploración y el empleo del espacio exterior han evolucionado rápidamente en las últimas décadas, transformándose en un área de interés estratégico para las naciones y de interés cotidiano para las personas. La soberanía espacial está relacionada con la capacidad que un país requiere generar para acceder a los beneficios que el espacio provee a las personas e incorporarlo como un factor fundamental para el desarrollo sostenible de nuestra sociedad en la Tierra. De esta forma, la dimensión espacial nos permite desde una perspectiva estratégica desarrollar tecnologías, generar conocimientos y promover el talento, así crear herramientas para incrementar la calidad de vida de las personas y brindar la seguridad necesaria para permitir el desarrollo nacional. Asimismo, contar con la información necesaria para asegurar la presencia del Estado, crear valor público y social en función de la implementación de políticas públicas pertinentes que aseguren la independencia nacional e impulsen el desarrollo, contribuyendo al progreso y la prosperidad de nuestra sociedad. Sin lugar a dudas que todos estos aspectos están estrechamente relacionados y se complementan entre sí de manera virtuosa en el contexto de la dimensión espacial, garantizando que un país pueda enfrentar los desafíos y aprovechar las oportunidades que el espacio exterior nos pueda brindar. El desarrollo de capacidades espaciales ofrece múltiples beneficios para el progreso del país. El acceso al espacio permite tener una mayor comprensión y capacidad de gestión del territorio y sus recursos, lo que fortalece el desarrollo, la seguridad y la defensa nacional. En el contexto del Programa Espacial Nacional, el desarrollo de tecnologías espaciales y generación de conocimiento en Chile impulsará de manera transversal la investigación, innovación, desarrollo y el emprendimiento en diversos sectores. Con ello, el crecimiento de la base industrial y tecnológica, generando empleo de calidad y atrayendo inversión extranjera. La soberanía espacial permite a Chile tomar mejores y más oportunas decisiones de manera autónoma en diversos ámbitos, como la información geoespacial en función de la capacidad de observación de la Tierra, de utilidad para la gestión ambiental, de recursos naturales y de desastres naturales, entre tantos otros aspectos. La comunicación satelital, que gracias a la capacidad global de conectar a las personas que ofrece, permite y facilita el funcionamiento de sistemas estratégicos e infraestructura crítica de los estados, junto con permitir el acceso a la información y la vinculación e interacción entre las personas. Y la navegación por satélite, que entre otros aspectos permite y propicia el desarrollo de una logística global y la utilización de sistemas autónomos, gracias a su mayor precisión y confiabilidad. Sin lugar a dudas, la investigación y la exploración espacial abren nuevas oportunidades científicas y culturales para Chile. En este escenario, la colaboración internacional cumple un papel fundamental en el ámbito espacial, fortaleciendo la vinculación internacional científica y tecnológica de Chile. Además de compartir conocimientos y recursos, aumenta la eficiencia y la competitividad de la industria y las regiones de nuestro país. La construcción de la soberanía espacial en función de la implementación del Programa Espacial Nacional de Chile es un desafío que podremos abordar trabajando en equipo como sociedad, colaborando con otros países e incorporándonos al sistema espacial internacional. Hoy Chile tiene la capacidad de definir su propio rumbo y navegar hacia el desarrollo, la exploración y utilización del espacio nos abren una senda para ello, en la cual la seguridad, el desarrollo tecnológico, la innovación y la consolidación de un sistema económico más digital y sostenible son los faros que iluminarán y conducirán hacia el bienestar y fortalecimiento de nuestra sociedad. La oportunidad de avanzar hacia la reducción de la brecha tecnológica y digital que las tecnologías espaciales nos brindan son hoy una realidad que el espacio nos ofrece en pro de mejorar la calidad de vida de las personas. El acceso soberano al espacio permite incorporar recursos, desarrollar capacidades y aprovechar oportunidades esenciales para incorporar a las personas como actores relevantes en su desarrollo y satisfacer las expectativas y requerimientos de la comunidad. Ello agrega valor público al crear valor social en áreas relevantes para el bien común, tales como la seguridad, la protección del medio ambiente, el desarrollo económico sostenible y la participación ciudadana. La independencia que hemos alcanzado como país nos permite colaborar con otras naciones, abordando desafíos globales y explorando nuevas fronteras, asegurando de esta manera un futuro próspero y sostenible para toda la humanidad. El frío y el hielo han sido siempre una barrera difícil de franquear para el ser humano. Sin embargo, ello no ha logrado apagar la curiosidad humana y la pasión por descubrir los secretos y riquezas del territorio más hostil e inhóspito del planeta. Porque la Antártica es precisamente eso, una gran promesa para la humanidad, pero también un interés permanente del Estado de Chile, plasmado en la política antártica nacional. Es por esto que la Fuerza Aérea de Chile envía anualmente un grupo selecto de gente muy bien preparada y consciente del valor y la importancia de la Antártica. La dotación antártica de la Fuerza Aérea de Chile es un gran equipo de gente apta, habilitada para colaborar en el cuidado y la protección de este magnífico tesoro para el bien de la humanidad. No podría ser de otra manera. Se requiere del valor y de valores para aventurarse en estas lejanías por más de 365 días y noches eternas, lejos de todo, de las familias, de las amistades y de cualquier expresión del mundo moderno. Sin embargo, y a pesar de todas las adversidades, hacen su trabajo cumpliendo una misión valiosísima, con profesionalismo, lealtad y con un compañerismo llevado al límite. La principal parte de esta designación es la labor de conectividad con el continente blanco, constituyendo la puerta de entrada al territorio antártico para distintos países e investigadores científicos, cuyo apoyo fundamental permite llevar adelante la tarea de proteger esta reserva única del planeta para el desarrollo de la ciencia, la investigación y el porvenir de una mejor calidad de vida en nuestro planeta.
Ahora sí. Bien, muchas gracias. Estamos
Well,
de
thank
vuelta.
you. We're back
Hacer la segunda parte de
for the second part of our seminar of day 2 of our event. As I mentioned during the opening remarks, some of the topics that we're going to discuss is the EPSI Implementation Fund. We're going to talk about the national history. We yesterday had Canada's version, and it's important to talk about different perspectives because of the intention, the approach on the seminar. It's basically essential for us to share the best practices, the experiences, the visions, mistakes that we have made through the implementation, of course, to avoid some others to commit the same mistakes. So for this presentation, anecdotic information of the country, we have Madam Malen Dati. She is the master on cyber defense on the strategic and political college. She is an advisor of the Ministry of Defense and armed conflict. She is an expert on gender, international affairs for the Subsecretariat. And Maria Paz Guerrati, the floor is yours.
¿Se escucha bien?
Good morning. Thank you, Gunnar. Thank you for this opportunity that we have as Secretary of Defense to talk about gender, to participate on this seminar that has been very interesting. A very good opportunity for everyone to be able to know everything that we do, the work that we do currently, and the ELSI fund.
Me comentan porque no
If
puedo.
we can share the presentation.
El video, no puedo compartir mi imagen. No sé si me pueden ayudar para ver.
No estamos viendo la imagen. Estamos coordinando con la HIT para que en este minuto nos habilite.
I think that the board will help us to share the presentation.
Ya, les voy a compartir mi imagen. Y estoy ahí con mi presentación.
Te vemos perfectamente a ti. Y...
¿Ahí sí?
La presentación tiene que pasar a modo presentación. Perfecto. Está al 100 de paso. Gracias.
¿Ahí sí? ¿Se ve la presentación o me veo solamente yo? ¿Está bien?
Se ve la presentación perfectamente, se te escucha muy bien también. Adelante, por favor.
Bueno, muchas gracias.
Thank you.
Bueno, como les decía, mi presentación va a ser
So my presentation is the national participation of the ELSI initiative and the challenges that we faced. Yesterday on the seminar, we had a presentation from Canada, where they are the pioneers of the ELSI initiative. So I will be focusing on the national history. This is what I have on my presentation, the objectives and the background of the initiative. So the national background wanted to promote the women participation in the armed forces in general, also in the operations. We don't have a study of all of the institutions nationally that can talk about the feminine participation on peace missions or operations, but we don't have the challenges, the barriers that we might encounter to promote women participation. So ELSI Fund, it's for us an opportunity to promote the national participation, but also to align the international commitments, the agenda on equality for 2020-2028, and as the state of Chile, to continue participating on the peace missions. Chile participated on peace operations prior to the confirmation of the United Nations. 1935 was the first time that we have a military commission in Chaco Murió. So we do have a commitment as a country that is permanent towards the cooperation on peace missions. And we believe that for inclusion and total incorporation of the society, we must incorporate women. Right? The fund is for us also an opportunity, specifically after comparing the experience We know about the experience of Uruguay, that was the first country of the region participating on the ELSI initiative. And afterwards, they had a series of activities regarding the incorporation of the fund. The first national action plan for the implementation of the resolution 1325. That it's a document that was created at the same time that ELSI. We received the invite, and we would like to talk a bit about that. This is the historic participation, anecdotic participation that had a peak over here, but afterwards we have been seeing a reduction on women participation overall for the peace operations. We had the COVID pandemic, we had the need to address the fewer resources that we had to offer initiatives, and this is an example of what happened because of that. There's a multidimensional response to explain the reduction on the women participation, well, both for Chile, but worldwide. And in the ELSI fund, we saw a very interesting opportunity made from the study of the barriers. This is one of the three modalities that we have on the fund to be able to participate. The ELSI fund offers, as I explained, three opportunities for participation. One is studying the barriers. Second, flexible financing for the projects. And third, it's more advanced, is that we have a bonus money allocation if we deploy strong visions of gender. We had the first modality, and after the first modality, you will see in just a minute how we had a project that was associated to the first modality to robust the barriers that we faced. In the ELSI fund, what's important for us because in 2021, we studied the barriers at a worldwide level, applying the MOIT methodology of the fund. So in that study, in that research, we analyzed the worldwide situation, the biggest factors, the more general factors that can influence the and participation on operations. First, it was carried out with the ELSI initiative, but also the Geneva Fund for the sector of security with the MOIT methodology developed by the Cornell University of the United States. Interesting for us was to determine that for our country, we were interested in analyzing the lack of opportunities that we have for deployment. As Ministry of Defense, we are on an ongoing process of the third national plan, and this had participation of the civil society, but also from some institutions. We have participated with institutional delegates of gender. I would like to salute Commander Fabri, one of the active participants that we had at the table. And in these initiatives, we notice that the challenges, that the situations, the barriers that we're talking about are present relatively in their country, but we were able to contrast everything that we mentioned during the study, the research, that is the base study coinciding with the DECA and the MOIT.
Como por ejemplo, la falta de políticas
We
favorables
have the lack of favorable policies for the families, conciliation. Some missions require years of experience that is not possible to achieve to the national situation. Right? We also have problems regarding support networks in the families. This is a limitation for women participation. And obviously, the pandemic and the delay on the participation of the world population. We are the most affected sector of the globe. We received an invitation on 2023 for the third round of the fund. It was for the Minister of National Defense and Public Policy. So in April 2023, had the due date for the delivery of the postulation June 2023. There was a huge amount of participants and many people were interested on the possibility of continue participating. So we increased the period of participation at the end, coming with the date of September 2023. September 8th is when we send the national postulation. This means that was signed with Minister Togaga, Minister Maria Fernanda, but also the Chancellor, Tan Clara. So it was a national postulation to study the barriers and to apply it on defense, the armed forces, but also carabineros and law enforcement doc investigation, police investigation. So part of the study proposal was to identify these barriers, right, that limit the significant participation of women within the 10 topics, 10 topic areas, the good practices that were existing on defense, on security institutions that we can potentiate, promote, and disseminate at the same time. And to formulate the recommendations based on the evidence. So the defense activities will have the promotion of significant participation in all of the areas. And to have a baseline, right, to measure the increase of the participation, the increase of the activities because of the strategy of 2018 to 2028 of the United Nations Initiative. So to complement the study, we also carry out these activities. This is something that we have seen a lot, dissemination of the information and awareness raising. The idea was to have campaigns, seminars through Secopa, but also ANEPE. This is the joint force of communications and strategies of Chile. And with the seminars, we could raise awareness to the higher ranks, medium sessions, but also staff of the military civilians that are also participating on different operations of the Defense Ministry. Specific actions. I'm not going to talk about all of them. I'm not going to talk about the barriers, of course, because this is a very long study, long research. But to propose how overcome the barriers. So we thought that the best way was to have a protocol through documents, triptychs, internal documents, emails, communication campaigns, so on and so forth. And the next objective for the barrier study was the pre-deployment of at least 40 women to have a database for the deployment, 40 women to execute immediate deployment or future deployment. So 40 women, I repeat. So all of these activities are also integrated on our programming, not only on the LC plan, but reflected as well on the elaboration of the third action plan implemented by the resolution 1325 and internally of the institutions of the Ministry of National Defense. So this is the document of the MOWIP methodology. The report that included all of the interesting barriers that we applied in our case. Unfortunately, I must mention that in March, we received the information we were not selected to participate in the fund. In the letter, we learned that more than 34 countries participated. We were not elected. So we hope to work at the second postulation for 2024. We still have not received the invitation letter, but we want to persevere because we truly believe that half the population are women. So women participation regarding national peace efforts are relevant for everyone. And this quote, I like it very much because that's 100% true. And this is what moved us for the LCPOM third action plan and persevere in our peace efforts on women, peace, and security agenda. And I will close with this. The evidence proves that women participation on peace missions increase the effectivity and increase the strongness of the country. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you, Maria Paz. Thank you for your excellent presentation. Along the same line that everything that we have been discussing on this second day. So this is our experience as a country for the fund, the experience that we had with the national plan. It was important for us to share some of the efforts that we are carrying out as a country. So we wanted to share this with you all. So thank you for reassuring everything that we have been mentioning along these 2 days, the spirit of the resolution 1325 and the peace processes where we know that women had an important space and a better perspective to move forward and to be more effective. This is something that we truly want to achieve. Now, to continue with the spirit of resolution 1325, as we heard on the presentation of the Inter-American Defense Board, this is the reality and the best way to move forward of 1325 is having an national action plan. And we have the first one in 2020. As Maria Paz explained, we're going to have a third version of a national action plan. So along the same line, I'm going to present Maria Pilar. She is an attorney of the Catholic University of Chile. She is also an expert on strategic studies, international affairs, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, of course, public security. She is the coordinator of the implementation and the implementation of the third national plan. Karen Valle, floor is yours.
Good morning. It is a pleasure to be able to be here with you, and I congratulate once again the Air Force of Chile and the IADB for this initiative that is so relevant, and it has given us the truth in a very spectacular manner. And also greetings to those that accompany us from other regions and those that accompany us from other countries. Talking about an international perspective, this is very important. I'm going to talk today about some ideas and some appreciations with regards to the experience of Chile in the implementation and preparation of, as a nation, of this resolution. Right now, we are in the full process of just preparing the third national action plan, and we're going to publish it very soon. And I have had the honor of leading the team of the Ministry of Defense that has been participating in this process. Maria Paz is part of that team. And on the path of this process, we have also done some other actions like the postulation to the LC fund that we will continue working on. The topics is for this morning are the following. We're going to give a brief review of what the national action plans are all about. And I think that several of us have already commented on this, some ideas on how we can link and why Chile links to the agenda of women, peace, and security. And next, the history of the national action plans in our country. So what are the national action plans? These plans were the tool that were sustained by the presidents that were part of the Council of Security of the year 2004 to strengthen and motivate the countries to implement in a national way the 1325 resolution. They can be defined as strategic documents at the national level of a government to localize actions in the agenda of women, peace, and security, because what they do is to land the principles and the concepts nationally through clear objectives and goals. And this will allow us to advance as members of the United Nations countries in this agenda. As you can see on the right of your screen, we have 108 members of the member countries of the United Nations that have this agenda already. And the majority of them have a national action plan. But there are countries that have the fifth release already. So Chile is in the countries with the second action plan. And we're going to be part of the list of countries that have 3 action plans. How does Chile position itself, and why does it position itself in face of this agenda? The truth is that for Chile, this is something coherent and natural, to considering that our country is a country that is committed with international peace and security and the peaceful solution of controversies and the desire to cooperate in multilateralism and the protection of human rights. All these principles in some way are contained in the agenda of women, peace, and security structured from the resolution 1325. So for Chile, since 2009 and previous years, where we started to prepare the first national action plan that was published in 2009, is to be part of this agenda was just coherent with its own policies and foreign policies, but also in its defense policy. As a consequence of this, we can see right now that we have 2 national action plans, and the other complement of this reasoning that is based on the foreign policies is that we have a very wide base of participation in the operations to manage crises. It's about 15,000 Chileans have been deployed in 27 missions throughout our history that started, as Maria Paz said, even before the creation of the UN. In 2009, we published our first national action plan. This was carried out during the first government of President Bachelet. At that time, only 17 countries had published a national action plan. That was in 2009. That was a different global situation to the one that we have right now. And this, in fact, gave us some concrete ideas about the context in which we were in 2009. There were 19 UN missions, only of the UN. And so this does not include all the different missions that we have at the global level. And there were like 28,000 people that were deployed, and only 3% of that total were women. When you see this in this way, you can observe very clearly how the challenge of the participation of women was something that was very significant and a great challenge. In the case of Chile, about the 525 people that we expected that year, only 12 were women. And we were in Haiti, which has been the gross of our operations and peacekeeping operations. Our first action plan recognized that in order to have equal gender equality, it was necessary to increase the participation of women, especially in the institutions of defense, and to promote the cultural changes among these institutions. And it was quite different to what we have right now. But here we were focused on being able to strengthen the female participation, a significant participation in peacekeeping operations. That was the main focus. Obviously, at this moment, Chile already had advancements in gender within the armed forces. One example of this was that in 2005, we dictated the first separate of the White Book, that promoted the inclusion of women in the armed forces and proposed certain action lines to advance in that sense. And then we had 6 years after the second national action plan in 2015 during the second government of President Bachelet. As you can see on this chart, context chart, the total of missions were quite similar to 2009, and the total of deployed persons, there were more than 107 people deployed globally in these missions, and about 4% of the total were women. That is, the situation had improved globally, but still the gap of the deployment between women and men was enormous because only 4% were women. In the case of Chile, we were able to improve our level of deployment of women to 2.89%. So we moved almost to a 3%. There was an improvement, but this is my appreciation that it was very limited. So that is why the challenge was still there. The participation, the significant participation as a challenge was still as a task that was still open. The second National Action Plan has certain improvements and changes with respect to the first one, and it is the product of an exercise of reflection and review of the different advancements, and we tried to integrate a more robust methodology, and we were able to do so. If you see the first text and the second text from 2009 and 2015, you can see that the methodology was improved as far as how the objectives and the tasks are exposed, and also how we want to follow up the compliance with the plan. The second plan had 4 axes: prevention, participation, protection, and relief and recovery, and each one of them incorporated its own specific actions. And in this way, we come to today. The government program of President Boric includes as one action to be complied with the publication of the third National Action Plan, and this is one of the tasks that we have been working on at the Ministry of Defense during this administration. And of course, this task that was commended to us is given in a context of different security context than the one in 2015. From 2015 to date, we have seen wars in its traditional war in Europe. In 2015, the discussion was centered on the conflicts that were interstate and more than the traditional wars. And we have new threats that are not so new anymore. But right now, we're facing a context of security that is very different. And we also have clear effects that we can see in the advancements of climate change. We have suffered. Several regions of the world have had very important migration crises at the regional level. We are facing situations of security linked to public security that are very relevant, added to the fact that we had a world pandemic. So we're living in a very different world, and this is something that these new plans have to collect. And the plans that are called the New Generation Plans have collected them. The UN had recognized this context of international security that is broader and more complex in 2015 when with Resolution 2042, and in all this, the context of the deployment can be seen in the framework that accompanies or the frame that accompanies this text, in which the participation dropped relevantly. The pandemic was a factor, but also some other situations of instability and crisis. And the situations of the African countries in the last years have generated, for instance, the conclusion of some of the historical missions. Haiti itself, MINUSTAT ended in 2017. Therefore, there was a redeployment here. And so Chile is at a level uh, a low level comparative to other historic times, but we have some positive things to highlight. And one thing that is key for what we're talking about is that although we have reduced our global participation, that does not stop women growing, and the level of women grew. And thanks to that, in the UN operations, the peacekeeping operations, right now we have about 40% of women deployed. If we see this in the macro of the peacekeeping operations and crisis management, we have elevated almost 30%. So we are above the index or the percentage that is the goal of the United Nations. And this is something that we are proud of and that we have to care about. If we expand our deployment, we have to respect this proportion. That is our goal and our objective. On the screen, you can see some other notable things of our deployment in Colombia, for instance. Right now, we have 5 women, 1 representative of each one of the armed forces and the forces of order, law enforcement. In 2022, we deployed for the first time the military observer at UNSO. In 2023, the first Navy woman was also deployed in Chipre. And during 2023, the first Chilean woman was selected to be part of the DPKO of the United Nations in recruitment, a great milestone that reflects this intention of increasing the participation in a significant way. With the publication and or the prompt publication, and I hope to come back here and tell you more about the details of this work that is still open. We're going to be part of the global list of countries that have a 3rd national action plan. This is, of course, a central axis of this government in the sense that it is part of the mission of the promotion of formal equality between men and women in all the environments. So what is new in this action plan? That we don't have the full details, but just for you to have some clear ideas. As far as the contents, now we talk about 3 specific areas of the pen. And for me, it is the most important change of this 3rd action plan. We're not only going to talk about peacekeeping and national security, which is the classical axis of the action plans, but we have 2 new topics that respond to this context of international security that is much more complex. We're going to promote actions in the climate change, environment, and disaster management that is so relevant for our country. And also, we're going to promote actions with regards to organized transnational crime and the trafficking in persons. And of course, this expansion of the focus does not mean that defense is going to be in all this, because it does not all correspond to it. But the way of working in this action plan has broadened as well as far as stakeholders. And now we're acting with the Ministry of the Environment, the Ministry of the Interior and Public Security through the SINAPRED, which is the institution that prevents disasters, and the Ministry of the Interior and Public Security with regards to organized crime. Defense is still related to our main classical axis of defense, which is the security of international security and peacekeeping. And we have interactions with all the other axes. We have some streamlined, like interculturality and regionalization of certain actions, not only see it based on the capital city, but also all the regions, and the equality between men and women. The temporary framework is going to be covered until 2030, and this in some way is trying to fit what we're doing right now, like incorporating the different UN documents. So we have been working very strongly with the comparative action. This is clear because we have had a very important evolution in the type of action plans that have been published in the last years. We have seen the experience of Uruguay and Mexico in the region, and Argentina and in the United States, and then in Europe and Norway, Spain, and Asia, like Japan, which is a country that is very vulnerable to climate change and natural disasters, which has given us light on how to face our own challenges and include them in our plan. And the participation of civil society is key from the second national plan. And now we're doing this in a more deep way and sustained way with greater impact, and it has resulted very well. Closing ideas, I think that if we observe the context of international security at the global level, there's no doubt that the agenda, women, peace, and security has a full enforcement and relevance. This is something that was important in the year 2000, 2009, and in the future as well. At the national level, we recognize and we value what other administrations have done and what the country has done in its history. And we continue advancing without resting because we still have many challenges to face. So I leave you my email and to those that are here and those online. From the Ministry of Defense, we are always willing to share with you all these ideas. Thank you. Thank you very much for your excellent presentation and for sharing the experience of our country that we understand can be quite relevant and useful for the rest of the countries and the institutions that are listening to us right now. Very importantly, and we have to emphasize how we have been able to advance in the peace processes and for all the operations that we're carrying out, and that it's not only important for us because defense is now managed in a global context. We thank the offer for coming to present the pen to this academy, and together in partnership with the IADB, because this is what the IADB does. It advises and also shares good practices. To close today's meeting, we're going to leave with you those that are doing those that are being the moderators of the IADB. I want to show you the images of who are participating and where they're participating and some of the comments. The registration has increased. We have 12,850 registered persons, some online, 66 countries in total, and this really fills us with pride. So I'm going to leave with you the team of moderators, where Sergeant Ana Laura Olvera is going to be there from Mexico, and together with Commander Charin are working in the Department of Gender and Human Rights of the IADB. Can you hear us?
Yes, we can hear you. Can you hear us? Yes, Ana, we can hear you. We can see you on the screen as well. Well, good morning. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. I'm Sergeant Ana Laura Olvera de Llanos. I am part of the Armed Forces of Mexico, and I develop my activities in gender, human rights, international humanitarian law of the Inter-American Defense Board. As part of my training, I know how to use parachutes, and I'm part of the Special Task Force. Right now in Washington, D.C. of the United States of America, we are transmitting the seminar Women, Peace and Security with my colleagues from Chile. I have with me from the Armed Forces of Peru, Berta García Poray, and from the Armed Forces of Peru, Eranio Pérez Delgado de Cerdeño. I wanted to take the opportunity to mention that we, as women, part of the board, have participated on the Council of Delegates and the presidency and the Secretariat of IADB, contribute in each of the divisions of this organization. I will also mention that the board has seminars, permanently training courses, and workshops. So we invite you all to be part of it, and you can access our website, www.iadb.org. This is an opportunity to exchange information, exchange important experiences in all of the member states, but also the observer countries, with the purpose of advising the development of specific measures that are mainly for our agenda of women, peace, and security that is being constantly updated. Thanks to this initiative and the support of each of you, we are able to do this.
Ana, estamos con algún problema de
Do
conexión.
we have any technical issue, Anna? We have lost you for a second. You're back. So I would love to inform that have the active participation of different organizations in different countries, such as the ones that we have on screen, from which we have received comments, experiences, and thoughts. 12,550 inscriptions of 67 different countries and regions. At the same time, and in accordance of the monitoring of a social network that we have carried out in real time, we have a high participation online. Some comments, as the ones that we have on screen, help us to witness that the participation has been cross-cutting, holistic, from different organizations, different institutions, going beyond the institutions of defense. This has provided an added value, enriching value to the seminar. We have received comments both from officers, civilians of different institutions of defense, women, men. These are some of the comments that we have from the audience, talking about the examples that we have shared, the impact of the seminar, the objectives that we have determined that are important with the Armed Forces of Chile and the board that are the hosts of this seminar. We have been also seeing everything that is uploaded to the YouTube channel and the Zoom platform. After each of the presentations, you have shared real case scenarios, anecdotal information, new challenges. Finally, I would like to invite you all to our next seminar. Humanitarian demining. It's taking place on May 22nd, and it's going to be a virtual seminar. You can enroll on our board website under the tab Events. This is a modern seminar organized by OAS and IADB. We will have experts from the board, from OAS, and the Service Against Mining of the United Nations. We will explore and discuss good practices, innovations, challenges, international standards to act against the humanitarian demining. One of the milestones of the seminar will be the international main standards to prove a significant advance for the development of the Americas. We will have simultaneous interpretation, English, Spanish, and Portuguese. The participants will receive a participation certificate. Participate and contribute to the common end of eliminating self or personal mining. And this is, we make sure, a way to be part of something that is saving lives every day. It is fundamental for us to have you to protect the values of the hemisphere, reflecting the principles of the board to promote and strengthen the trust on the hemisphere. And OAS that is standing for the rights of more and more people every day. Visit our website under the tab Events, and you can become part of this social initiative. We hope that you can be part of a safest future for us all. Let's contribute to have a free America and without the interpersonal minings. Thank you.
Bien, muchas gracias, Sargento Olvera.
Yes, thank you, Sergeant Olvera. As you can see, this is the invitation to the seminar. We have received many comments that are very positive, and it's important to see. I would like to highlight the participation of not only the staff of defense and security, but also representatives of the civil society, lawyers, bars, associations. And this is something that make us see and make us understand that everything that we do is extremely important, and from the equality for the development of peace, security, and internal regulations. So we believe that we are not only benefiting the defense sector, but the society overall. I would like to thank the board for letting us know what's coming on the agenda. There's a humanitarian demining seminar on the 22nd of May. We will have a cyber defense near to the second semester, and human rights seminar as well. I know that it's coming shortly. Thank you for your participation. Let me share tomorrow's agenda. Our last day of the seminar, we will start talking about the gender gaps and the impact on the development of the country. This is something that we have researched on the territory of Chile. We would love to share how we're moving forward, how we are advancing, and this is going to be very interesting and important for all the audience. Then we have the participation of Mexico, sharing the participation of women, inclusion of women on the armed forces. Then we have the UK talking about the importance of having diversity on the armed forces. This is important at a national level and for the national perspective. Then the reconciliation with the family and the personal standpoint, we understand that the family is essential, right? This is something that it's needed for the excellent development of the work that we do every day, disregarding if it's defense, security, when you're deployed, when you're working with your unit. I mean, the family, it's always being taken care of. We are going to continue with strategic planning on gender perspective. This is a presentation from Spain talking about the different planning processes that we are going to be using and seeing more and more every day. This is used currently with the gender perspective, of course. It's relevant for the planning to move forward. This is basic. As part of the military, on the planning, we consider technology, routes of access, terrain, Well, it's also important to consider the gender perspective. It's fundamental to be able to have a successful result, to have the best possibilities to move forward and to advance and to be able to reach what we want to reach, the objectives that we have set our minds on. Then we have Colonel Jesus Gil on cyber defense, gender approach. I believe that this it's going to be very interesting because it's difficult for the audience to make the relationship between gender and technology. Then we will have a talk about labor harassment and sexual harassment. This is important, and this is going to be another presentation that we have tomorrow. We are going to talk about a tool that is very modern. It's a virtual tool, a gaming. This is to learn effectively. It's important for the military institute and the schools and colleges. This is a tool that was developed with the support of the Inter-American Defense Board, and this is going to be a proof of how important it is to work bilaterally. Then we have the log group with the closing remarks, the Ministries of America, Ministries of Defense, talking about the work that was done in April and everything that is happening in the Americas. To close and to wrap up this interesting seminar with the Air Force of Chile and the Inter-American Defense Board. You can follow us. We're going to be starting tomorrow, 9 sharp. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Recording stopped.